How can aligning your go-to-market teams elevate your customer experience? Find out in this week's episode of Closing Time. Hi, I'm Chip House, CMO at Insightly. This is Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders, and I'm joined today by Jay Baer. Jay has been called the world's most inspirational customer experience and marketing keynote speaker. He's the author of 6 best-selling books, a 7th-generation entrepreneur, and the founder of 5 multi-million-dollar companies. Plus, he's a certified tequila sommelier and a lover of all things plaid, as you can tell. Welcome, Jay.
Chip House, great to be here on Closing Time. I'm glad my mom wrote that incredible introduction and sent it to you. That was very nice of her.
She is an incredible writer. She's got a content marketing job in her future, Jay.
Well, she's got like 14 master's degrees in English, so it's true. She could be a content marketer, but instead she chose to be a high school English teacher.
Yeah, well, I'm sure she's a phenomenal writer and editor. So, Jay, as I mentioned, you've been in digital marketing, you've been in selling, you are a thought leader on customer experience and customer success, and you've written a couple of books there. So one of the books that I read some years back was called Youtility, and Youtility was about how better marketing is more about help than hype. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sure is. Absolutely. The idea there, Chip, is that if you sell something, you'll make a customer today. But if you help someone, you can create a customer relationship for life. And that's really what we're trying to do in most cases. And that relationship building starts in the pre-sales phase, right? So the first introduction you have to a brand can, and in my estimation, should be useful to the prospective customer because it sets the tone for that relationship that, hey, it's not just about a transaction. It transcends the transaction and creates value every step of the way. Can I give you a recent example?
Yeah, please do.
So, you like pasta. I like pasta. I don't know a lot of people who don't like pasta, right?
Who doesn't?
Yeah, kind of a universal thing, right? So the thing about pasta is that if you cook it right, it's amazing. But if you cook it a little bit wrong, it gets bad quick, right? A little underdone, a little overdone, not so good. It's a little bit of a mystery, right? And the other issue is that there's a lot of different kinds of pasta, right? You got your fusilli, you got your penne, you got your spaghetti, whatever. And each of those has slightly different cooking times because the shape is different, the density is different. I'm not a physicist, right? But that's basically how it works. So Barilla Pasta, big popular brand of dried pasta, everybody's seen it in their grocer. Barilla finally realized that from a customer experience standpoint, the challenge for their customers was getting the pasta dead on, or al dente as it's called. So here's what they did, Chip, and I love this example of Youtility. They went out on Spotify and created a series of playlists for each of their main dried pasta SKUs. So there's a spaghetti playlist, a penne playlist, a rigatoni playlist. So what you do, you boil your water, you put the pasta in the water, and you hit play on the Spotify playlist. And there's a whole bunch of songs. Some of them are Italian, kind of funny, whatever. But the second the playlist concludes, you take the pasta out of the water, perfectly done. I'm like, bravo. They have hundreds of thousands of favorites and saves and plays of these playlists. That's smart marketing.
So in that case, they're actually really leaning into the idea of creating content around helping their customers, right? I mean, that's the whole idea. How do you add value to the relationship when you're a marketer, when you're leading a go-to-market team to just create that value for your customers?
Yeah, and it works the same way for sales, Chip. I mean, it's so often that salespeople are trying to move a deal forward, right? It's maybe they're stalled out a little bit, or the timeline is extending longer than you thought, or you're trying to get a renewal. There's some kind of event that you're trying to progress toward. And I have found that one of the best ways to do that is to rely on this utility philosophy. It's not so much saying to the prospective customer, or maybe the current customer that you're trying to renew, hey, what can you do for me? How can you give me money? But rather, what can I do for you? Yes, of course, I'm a salesperson and I'm trying to sell you something, but there's a lot of other value that you can provide in that relationship, even if it doesn't have anything to do with this particular company and transaction. So I had a client once who owned a public relations firm in Albuquerque, and I was trying to get them to renew on an annual contract. And I was on Facebook, and I noticed that he broke his sunglasses. So I had somebody on my team just go buy him a pair of sunglasses, same ones that he lost, FedEx it, got it the next morning with a little note, hey, really sorry about your sunglasses, and we had that contract back in 2 days. Now, I'm not suggesting you buy everybody sunglasses. That would be probably difficult to execute in practice, but that idea of don't always make it about the deal, transcend the transaction.
For sure. Well, so closing time, one of the main set of viewers are B2B go-to-market leaders, including B2B salespeople. So can you double click on that a little bit, Jay, and just tell me more about if I'm a B2B salesperson, what should I be thinking about from helping my customer standpoint?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that gets overlooked, and in B2B, since the pandemic, okay, 20% of B2B buyers have changed the totality of their suppliers. Completely new cast of characters. So the question becomes, why is that true? It's not necessarily a price issue. What we've discovered in the research, Chip, is that more than ever, what B2B customers care about is how easy are you to buy from. So if I was a B2B go-to-market salesperson, and largely I am, I sell B2B companies my services all the time. What I'm always focused on is not necessarily what is the product or service, or even how do you price that product or service. What I'm looking for is how do I make the process of working with me as easy as possible? How do I make it fast? How do I make it not confusing? How do I display empathy? How do I make it useful? Right? Working with you can be a feature in and of itself if you spend the requisite time to kind of shave down the rough edges of those touch points.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's pivot a little bit here, Jay, because the customer journey involves multiple teams typically, right? You've got marketing, creating a lot of the content. You've got sales engaging with the customers. And then once they become a customer, you've got the customer success and the support teams and things like that engaging. And so why does alignment across sales, marketing, and customer service and customer success really elevate the customer experience?
I tell you what, Chip, I love this question because the reality is that the customer does not care about your org chart. They don't care whether you're in marketing or sales or customer support or accounting or R&D or janitorial. They don't care. When they see you, all they see is logo, your internal org chart and your wiring and how you work together between your divisions and your departments. It doesn't matter to them, and it shouldn't matter to them. The ultimate customer experience is that everybody in your organization can handle whatever issues the customer has. And in fact, one of my key rules, Chip, when you're talking to a customer is to try to not show that wiring behind the scenes, right? Don't show them the framework of the house. So I really try to avoid saying things like division and department and them, because ultimately that's your issue. That's your business structure. It should be immaterial or invisible, or at least opaque to the customer.
Right. I mean, it always feels weird if you're on the customer side, right? And somebody says, well, that's another division. It's not my problem, basically is what you hear, right?
Yeah. You're like, well, wait a second. Why don't you just get a hold of them and solve it for me? Like, why do I need to now talk to a different person? Or it's like when people go and buy a car, right? Like, well, I'm going to have to go talk to the sales manager and see if we can waive the cost for that undercoating or whatever. And you're like, bro, this is so ridiculous. There's not even a guy. You are the guy. You're making this up. This is like a myth. And you don't want your customer to feel like this is theater somehow. Just be like, yeah, we'll handle it. And the fact that you have to go check with 6 other people in your organization, that's on you, not on the customer.
Right. Well, you mean this car doesn't come with floor mats? But I don't know why we accept that, by the way. It's a sort of common. So do you have other thoughts on where the ball gets dropped often, Jay? Between departments, is it ability to manage the customer data? What are some of the other common things? And then sort of second part of the question is, if I'm a go-to-market leader, how do I coach my team to avoid some of those pitfalls?
Well, the ball gets dropped in any number of ways, but I think the best way to make sure there's alignment is to make sure the leaders are aligned. Look, this goes back to sort of organizational culture and structure. But Chip, I'm not telling you anything you don't know and have not experienced. In a lot of organizations, you have a strong marketing leader and a strong revenue or sort of sales leader that ostensibly are working towards the same goal, which is revenue creation and customer preservation. But in reality, sometimes they're incentivized differently. In some cases, they report to different people inside the organizational structure. They are set up to be at odds. And there's this idea that that's good news, right? That kind of factions actually produces better outcomes, but I don't believe that to actually be the case. Ultimately, if you're going to have a unified front and you're going to have true alignment between your totality of your go-to-market organization, those leaders have to very much be on the same page. And from a day-to-day operations perspective, one of the things I really recommend is making sure that you take the time to ensure that the salespeople kind of understand what marketers really do every day and vice versa. Whether that's ride-alongs or embedded folks in meetings, et cetera. There's a lot of ways to sort of build that familiarity, but it's shocking to me, Chip, here we are in, 2020, whatever, and a lot of salespeople only vaguely understand what marketing does day to day. And there are a lot of marketing people who only vaguely understand what sales actually does day to day. And that's got to get fixed.
So, Jay, I mean, clearly you're passionate about this topic. You've written books on this topic. So I'm sure that you believe that companies that are aligned around the customer as a go-to-market team are more successful. So do you believe that? And why do you think that is?
Yes, I believe it. And there's lots of data to back it up. The research from the CEB said that aligned sales and marketing teams produce 400% higher average annual growth rates, which is staggering, right? So I don't know that anybody could rationally say, hey, we're better off if our sales and marketing teams aren't aligned, right? Or not on the same page. I'm not really sure how you would make that argument. And even more so, Chip, okay, this is going to get a little obtuse, but I thought about this the other day. All right, let's say that you are an alien race and you show up here at Earth, right? And maybe they've already done this. Time will tell. But you're thinking, all right, they have a thing in this planet called business, and this is how they get goods and services. And how are these businesses structured? Well, there's one group of people that's called marketing. And their job is to get the prospect ready to sell. And there's another group, separate group, called sales. And their responsibility is to actually extract the money. A rational alien being would say, well, aren't they basically doing the same thing? Why are those separate departments? Why are they separate groups of people? And I would argue the time, frankly, for having separate sales and marketing teams is probably an anachronism, which is why, and this is not an accident, that a lot of new companies, a lot of startups and early stage companies have a unified revenue group, right? You don't have sales and marketing. You've got revenue and go to market, and there's one leader or joint leadership, but they're not, it's a difference that has outlived its usefulness in my estimation.
Yeah, that's amazing, Jay. And there's so much to dig into there. We might have to come back for another episode to dig into
the only alien race episode coming up soon on Closing Time.
Exactly. From the perspective of aliens is coming up soon. That's a killer title. But Jay, we're out of time for now. And thanks so much for joining us. Really great having you.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this episode of Closing Time. Make sure you subscribe, then tick the bell so you don't miss any episodes. And we'll see you next time.